What happens when a routine late-night laugh suddenly turns into a moment the entire studio feels in its chest? The lights were warm, the band had just rapped their familiar riff, and the audience was already leaning forward, ready for another easy, playful exchange. On the surface, it was supposed to be just another polished night on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Another celebrity seat, another round of charming anecdotes, another clip destined to float harmlessly through social media. But something in the air felt different the moment Rosario Dawson walked out. Her smile was there, practiced yet genuine, but behind it lived a stillness that didn't quite match the room's energy. The kind of stillness that comes from someone who has already decided they won't laugh something off this time. Before we dive into this moment, before the tension, before the silence, before the unexpected pushback, make sure you subscribe to Talk Flair, hit that like button, and drop a comment right now if you love behind-the-scenes celebrity moments that turn explosive when no one expects them. Rosario took her seat, crossing her legs with calm precision as the applause faded. Jimmy leaned back in his chair, cards in hand, relaxed, smiling, fully in control, or so it seemed. The first few minutes played out exactly as rehearsed by years of late-night tradition. A light joke about traffic in Los Angeles. A laugh from Rosario, warm but brief. A comment about her latest project, delivered smoothly, professionally. The audience nodded along, comfortable, settled into the rhythm of familiarity. But then Jimmy tilted his head slightly, that half-curious, half-mischievous expression crossing his face. "So," he said, glancing down at his card, then back up at her. "You've always been pretty outspoken. Ever worry that saying too much might, I don't know, hurt your career?" The words landed softly, almost politely. Almost. Rosario's smile didn't vanish, but it tightened. The audience chuckled, assuming this was still part of the dance. She leaned forward just a fraction, her hands resting together, fingers interlaced. For a second, she said nothing. That pause stretched longer than late-night television usually allows. "Hurt my career?" she repeated, her voice calm measured. Jimmy laughed lightly. "I mean, you know how Hollywood is." That was the moment something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but undeniably. Rosario tilted her head, eyes steady on Jimmy now. "I think what hurts careers more," she said slowly, "is pretending we don't see what's right in front of us." The audience's laughter thinned, turning uneven. A few claps echoed uncertainly before stopping altogether. Jimmy raised his eyebrows, still smiling, but the smile had begun to strain at the edges. Sure, he said, trying to keep the tone buoyant. "But sometimes people tune in to laugh, not get lectured." Rosario exhaled through her nose, a quiet breath that felt heavier than any raised voice. "And sometimes," she replied, "laughter is what we use to avoid listening." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Camera operators subtly adjusted their framing. The band sat still, hands off instruments, waiting for a cue that didn't come. Jimmy shifted in his chair. "I'm just saying," he said, leaning forward now. "There's a balance, right? Entertainment versus honesty?" Rosario cut in gently but firmly. The interruption wasn't sharp. It didn't need to be. That was what made it land. Jimmy blinked, surprised. For the first time that night, he hesitated. "I didn't mean." "I know what you meant," Rosario said. Her voice wasn't angry. That was the unsettling part. It was grounded, steady, unflinching. "And I think a lot of people at home know exactly what you meant too." The audience went quiet. Not awkward quiet. Attentive quiet. Rosario leaned back slightly, eyes flicking briefly toward the crowd before returning to Jimmy. "When I speak up," she continued, "it's not because I'm trying to be provocative. It's because I'm tired of watching conversations get softened until they mean nothing." Jimmy let out a short laugh, hoping to reset the mood. "Wow. Okay. This got serious fast." She nodded. "Life is serious. We just decorate it with jokes." A single clap rang out from somewhere in the audience. Then another. Then a handful more, scattered but growing. Jimmy straightened his cards, tapping them against the desk. "I just don't want people thinking you're angry," he said, half joking, half defensive. Rosario's eyes softened, but her words didn't. "I'm not angry," she said. "I'm clear." That line landed like a quiet thunderclap. The crowd erupted, not in roaring laughter, but in applause. The kind that comes when people feel they're witnessing something real. Jimmy nodded slowly, lips pressed together, absorbing the moment even as he tried to steer the show back onto safer ground. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, "we'll take a quick break." But the break didn't break the tension. It froze it. As the cameras pulled back and the applause continued, Rosario remained seated, composed, unbothered. Jimmy glanced toward the stage manager, then back at her, a flicker of something unreadable passing across his face. This wasn't the moment anyone had planned. And it was only the beginning. The red glow of the on-air sign dimmed as the show cut to commercial, but the tension didn't fade with it. If anything, it thickened. The applause that had erupted moments earlier now dissolved into a low, uncertain hum as audience members glanced at one another, silently asking the same question. Did that really just happen? Jimmy leaned back in his chair, exhaling through pursed lips. Off camera, a producer's voice crackled faintly, too hushed for words to be caught, but sharp enough to carry urgency. Rosario sat still, her posture relaxed, eyes focused somewhere beyond the stage lights. She wasn't rattled. That much was clear. If anything, she looked grounded, like someone who had finally said something they'd been holding in for years. Jimmy cleared his throat and forced a chuckle, turning slightly toward her as the band filled the space with a neutral, looping tune. "Hey," he said quietly, leaning in just enough to seem casual. "We're good, right?" Rosario turned her head slowly, meeting his gaze. "We're honest," she replied. "That's usually better." He nodded, though the nod came a second too late. Sure. He tapped his fingers against the desk, a habit he rarely showed on camera. "Just, you know how this stuff plays." She smiled, not the polished red carpet smile, but something smaller, more human. "That's exactly why I said what I said." The band music softened. A stagehand lifted a hand. 5 seconds. Jimmy straightened his jacket, inhaled, and plastered his host's smile back on as the cameras swung into place. The sign lit up again. "And we're back," Jimmy announced, voice upbeat, practiced. "I'm here with Rosario Dawson." Applause followed, louder than before, charged with curiosity now instead of routine enthusiasm. Rosario acknowledged it with a brief nod, her eyes scanning the crowd, as if she could feel their attention pressing toward her. Jimmy shuffled his cards. "So let's pivot a bit," he said lightly. "Your new film has been getting a lot of buzz." Rosario tilted her head. "I'm happy to talk about it," she said. "But I don't really pivot away from things just because they get uncomfortable." The audience reacted immediately. A collective "oh" rippled through the studio, followed by nervous laughter. Jimmy raised his hand slightly, smiling. "I'm not uncomfortable." She looked at him, not confrontationally, but searchingly. "Then let's keep going." For a brief moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched, elastic and alive. Jimmy glanced at the audience, then back at Rosario. He laughed again, but this time it sounded thinner. "All right," he said. "Let's keep going." He leaned forward. "You talk a lot about responsibility. Actors using their platform. Do you think entertainers owe the public something beyond entertainment?" Rosario didn't answer immediately. She shifted in her seat, crossing one ankle over the other, then looked straight into the camera. Not at Jimmy. At the people watching from couches and phones and half-lit bedrooms. "I think we owe them honesty," she said. "At the very least, we owe them respect." The room was silent again. Even the band stayed still. Jimmy followed her gaze to the camera, then back to her. "But isn't there a risk," he said carefully, "that people feel talked down to?" Her eyes returned to him, calm but unwavering. "Only if the truth feels like an accusation." A few audience members clapped before stopping themselves, unsure if applause was allowed here. Jimmy leaned back, folding his arms loosely. "You know," he said, trying for humor, "this is turning into more of a debate than an interview." Rosario smiled softly. Conversations usually do when both people are actually listening. That one landed harder. Jimmy's jaw tightened just slightly. He nodded, then glanced at his cards again, as if hoping they'd offer an escape hatch. "Okay," he said. "Let me ask you this. Do you ever regret saying something publicly?" Rosario's expression changed, not dramatically, but subtly. Her eyes darkened with memory. "I regret the moments I stayed quiet," she said. "I regret every time I chose comfort over clarity." The audience reacted with a low murmur, like wind moving through a crowd. Somewhere in the back, someone whispered, "Wow." Jimmy let out a breathy laugh. "You're really not holding back tonight." She shrugged lightly. "Neither are you." "You asked." That was the thing. She wasn't attacking him. She was reflecting the questions back, polished, sharpened, undeniable. Jimmy rubbed his chin. "You know people are going to clip this," he said. "It'll be everywhere by tomorrow." Rosario nodded. "Good." The word was simple. Final. The crowd applauded again, louder this time, less hesitant. Jimmy waited for it to die down, then leaned forward, his tone shifting. less jokey, more personal. Do you think there's a line, he asked, between using your voice and alienating people who just want an escape? Rosario considered him for a long moment. I think escapism is a privilege, she said. Not everyone gets to tune out. Some people live the things we joke about. The applause came instantly now. Sustained. Earnest. Jimmy forced a smile, nodding along, but something in his eyes betrayed a flicker of discomfort. Well, he said, I guess we'll let the internet decide. Rosario met his gaze one last time. The internet always does, she said. But real conversations don't happen in comment sections. They happen right here. She gestured gently between them. That line hung in the air as the band finally kicked back in, louder than necessary. Jimmy laughed, clapping his hands together. All right, he said quickly. We'll be right back. As the cameras pulled away, producers rushed the stage, whispering urgently into headsets. Jimmy stood, adjusting his jacket, offering Rosario a polite nod that didn't quite meet her eyes. She remained seated, composed, unshaken. And somewhere beyond the studio walls, clips were already being cut, captions already being written, narratives already forming. The pushback wasn't just felt in that room anymore. It was spreading. The cameras cut to commercial again, but this time the shift was unmistakable. The energy in the room wasn't just tense, it was volatile. Crew members moved faster, voices hushed but urgent, footsteps echoing louder than they should have on the polished studio floor. The audience sat frozen in their seats, whispering to one another, phones itching in pockets, knowing they were witnessing something that wouldn't stay confined to the studio walls for long. Jimmy stepped away from the desk the moment the red light went dark. The smile vanished from his face like a switch flipped off. He loosened his tie, exhaling sharply, running a hand through his hair. Okay, he muttered, turning toward the nearest producer. That went off the rails. The producer leaned in close, clipboard pressed to his chest. It's already trending, he whispered. People in the control room are clipping it in real time. Jimmy scoffed, shaking his head. Of course they are. Across the stage, Rosario remained seated, legs crossed, hands resting calmly in her lap. She watched the movement around her with quiet awareness, not defensive, not triumphant, just present. A stage assistant approached, offering water. Rosario accepted it with a nod. You all right? The assistant asked softly. Rosario smiled faintly. I'm exactly where I meant to be. Jimmy glanced over at her, then back to the producer. Did we book her to start a culture war on my desk? He asked, trying and failing to sound amused. You asked the questions, the producer replied carefully. That landed harder than anything Rosario had said on camera. Jimmy exhaled again, slower this time. I need to steer this back, he said. One more segment. Light. Fun. The producer hesitated. With respect, the audience isn't in a light and fun place anymore. Jimmy looked out at the crowd. He could feel it now, the shift. They weren't just spectators. They were witnesses. The band fell silent again. A stage manager raised 3 fingers. Rosario took another sip of water, then set the glass down, her gaze lifting toward Jimmy as he returned to his chair. Their eyes met briefly, no hostility, no challenge, but something unspoken passed between them. Recognition. This wasn't a performance anymore. The on-air sign blazed back to life. And we're back, Jimmy said, voice steady but tighter than before. Still here with Rosario Dawson. The applause came, but it carried weight now. Purpose. Jimmy leaned forward. You've talked about truth, responsibility, he said. Let me ask you something more personal. Rosario nodded. Okay. Do you think, he began slowly, that moments like this, public confrontations, actually change anything? The question wasn't on the cards. The audience sensed it. Rosario did too. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked around the studio, at the crowd, the cameras, the crew, the glowing signs, the machinery of television itself. I think moments like this reveal things, she said. Change comes later. Jimmy tilted his head. Reveal what? She turned back to him. Who's willing to sit in discomfort? And who needs a laugh to escape it? The crowd reacted instantly, applause louder than before, mixed with cheers that felt almost defiant. Jimmy let the sound wash over him, then smiled tightly. You know, he said, some people are going to say this isn't the place for that. Rosario's voice softened. Every place is the place. Silence travels everywhere, too. For a split second, Jimmy looked genuinely caught off guard. He glanced at the camera, then back at her. So what do you want people watching at home to take from this? Rosario leaned forward, resting her elbows lightly on her knees. That their voice matters, she said. And that asking someone to be quiet is also a political choice. The studio erupted. Not polite applause, real applause. The kind that rolls and builds and refuses to stop on cue. Jimmy laughed nervously, lifting his hands. All right, he said. I think the audience has spoken. The band kicked in again, almost triumphant now. Jimmy stood, signaling the end of the segment sooner than planned. Rosario Dawson, everyone. The applause thundered as Rosario stood, acknowledging the crowd. She shook Jimmy's hand, firm, respectful. No victor. No villain. Just two people standing in the aftermath of something bigger than both of them. As she walked off stage, whispers followed her like a wake. Crew members exchanged looks. Phones buzzed in pockets. In the control room, screens filled with tweets, headlines forming in real time. Rosario Dawson shuts down Jimmy Kimmel on live TV. Awkward moment turns powerful. Late-night laughs give way to uncomfortable truth. Jimmy returned to his desk alone. He stared at the camera for a half-second longer than usual before forcing his grin back into place. We'll be right back, he said. But by the time the show wrapped, the story was already out of his hands. Clips flooded social media within minutes. Short, sharp edits. Captions dripping with opinion. Some called Rosario brave. Others called her confrontational. Some accused Jimmy of tone policing. Others said he'd lost control of his own show. And in the middle of it all, one thing was undeniable. This wasn't just another viral clip. It was a fault line. By the time the studio lights dimmed for the final time that night, the moment had already escaped the building. Phones glowed in the audience as people filed out, fingers moving fast, captions half-formed, opinions already sharpened. In the parking lot, in ride shares, in quiet kitchens across the country, the same clips replayed again and again. Rosario's calm voice. Jimmy's tightening smile. The pauses. The silences. The lines that felt too honest for a comedy desk. By sunrise, the internet had chosen sides. Morning shows looped the footage with dramatic music under it. Headlines scrolled in bold, urgent fonts. Some framed it as a brave stand, others as an ambush. Commentators dissected every second. Where Rosario leaned forward, where Jimmy laughed, where the audience clapped too long. Body language experts slowed it down frame by frame. Was Jimmy defensive? Was Rosario prepared? Had this been brewing long before the cameras rolled? Hashtags trended worldwide. In one clip alone, Rosario's words, "I'm not angry. I'm clear," racked up millions of views in hours. People stitched it to their own stories. Teachers, nurses, artists, parents, strangers who said they'd swallowed their truth too many times because it wasn't the right place. Late-night hosts weighed in carefully, joking around the edges without touching the center. Some praised the moment as refreshingly real. Others warned it might make future guests think twice before coming on. And Jimmy? Jimmy didn't tweet right away. Inside his office, the mood was quieter than usual. No jokes. No monologue rewrites scattered across the desk. Just a phone face down beside a cold cup of coffee. Producers spoke in measured tones, talking about optics, balance, damage control. "She made us look bad," one voice said. "She made us look honest," another countered. Jimmy finally picked up his phone. Notifications flooded in, support, criticism, memes, think pieces. He scrolled, stopped, exhaled. Then he did something unexpected. He posted a single line. Sometimes the best conversations are the uncomfortable ones. No explanation. No defense. No punchline. The reaction was immediate. Some applauded the restraint. Others accused him of dodging accountability. But even his critics noticed something. He hadn't dismissed the moment. He hadn't laughed it off. He'd let it stand. Rosario, meanwhile, stayed quiet longer. When she finally spoke, it wasn't in an interview. It wasn't on a stage. It was a short post, simple and unpolished. "I didn't go on TV to argue. I went to be honest. If that made you uncomfortable, maybe sit with that feeling. It's trying to tell you something." The post exploded. Support poured in from actors, activists, writers, people who'd learned how carefully truth had to be rationed in public spaces. Others pushed back, insisting late-night shows weren't the place for serious talk. But the question lingered unanswered. If not there, then where? In the days that followed, ratings spiked. So did scrutiny. Future guests referenced the moment, sometimes joking, sometimes not. Audiences watched more closely now, listening between the laughs, waiting for the next crack in the surface. And for a brief stretch of time, A talk show desk became something else. A mirror. Weeks later, a fan asked Rosario in a hallway interview if she regretted that night. She smiled, the same calm smile from the studio. "No," she said. "I regret the nights I stayed silent." The clip of that answer went viral too, because it wasn't just about Rosario Dawson or Jimmy Kimmel anymore. It was about who gets to speak, where truth is allowed to exist, and how quickly comfort becomes a cage. Moments like this don't fade quietly. They ripple. They resurface. They ask something of everyone watching. Now it's your turn. What did you see in that exchange? Bravery, tension, discomfort, or something deeper? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if you want more cinematic, emotional, behind-the-scenes stories where celebrity moments turn into cultural flashpoints, subscribe to Talk Flair right now. Hit like, share this story with someone who needs to see it, and stay with us, because the most explosive moments are the ones no one planned. The cameras may cut, but the conversation doesn't end here.